Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, viewers from India and across the globe. My name is Zuchamo Yantan, President of the Naga Scholars Association. Well, I, on behalf of the Naga Scholars Association, take this wonderful opportunity to invite each and every one of you to our webinar, panel discussion on delimitation in Manipur and in Nagaland. This is a very hot topic which is going across the two states. So that is the reason why the NSA have chosen to have a panel discussion on this very topic. Well, I would like to make a little request for those of you who have opened your audio to please keep it on a mute. Thank you. Well, you know, we all know delimitation means fixing the boundaries of constituencies rather, which is to be, you know, enacted every after census as, you know, stated under Article 82 of the Indian Constitution. And in the last 70 years of India's existence as, you know, a republic, delimitation has been exercised 4 times. Once it was in 1952, 1963, 1973, and 2001. Unfortunately, the last delimitation of 2001 has left out Manipur and Nagaland and few other states. Hence, it is now nearly half a century since the last delimitation in Manipur and Nagaland state. Perhaps this could be a very good topic for Naga scholars to undertake a study, analyze why the delay could not be addressed or resolved by both the states. Well, if we observe the distribution of seats in Manipur, we see that the hill tribes occupies nearly 90% of the Manipur territory and 42% of the total population of the state. Hence, we see deprivation, you know, against the tribal groups in the distribution of seats in Manipur. And this could also be a very good area that a Naga Scholars Association can undertake to understand, to have a clear picture on this issue. And now coming back to Nagaland, it is found that when interim body was formed in 1962, that is prior to attainment of Nagaland statehood, the distribution of seat was based on proportionate tribal representations as follows. Angamis had 6, Aus 4, Chagasang 3, Chang 2, Achari 1, Kimingan 2, Konyak 4, Kuki 1, Lotha 4, Pom 2, Rengma 2, Sangtam 3, Sema 4, Yimchungar 2, and Ziliang 2. However, it is found that the proportionate tribal representation was changed in the first delimitation exercise in 1964. This is the report of Government of Nagaland, results of General Assembly election of Nagaland, 7th edition, that was published by Directorate of Statistics 2013. Similarly, in the second delimitation exercise in 1973, there was even transfer of assembly segments from one tribe to another. Hence, it is clear that there are deprivations in the distribution of seats in Nagaland. Well, now that the state government of, that the government of India has clearly stated the situation which led to the deferment of delimitation in 2002 in Manipur and Nagaland has ceased to exist, and that a delimitation can now, you know, proceed under the provision of the Delimitation Act 2003. However, since the announcement on 8 March 2020 for reconstituting delimitation, there has been a range of conflicting voices and views emerging from, across Manipur and Nagaland, which are reported in print as well as in social media platform. And even today, the joint tribal Hoho tribes in Nagaland has given a press statement solution before delimitation. Well, as scholars, we cannot be directed by what we hear in the media or from different, sources. It is very important as scholars to have a proper deliberation, and so that it will help us to find out the truth, and that's how we may be able to accept the truth, and that's how we may be able to help us in a better views and decision making as well. Well, in the light of the prevailing debate on the subject, the NSA is initiating a preliminary panel discussion involving experts on the subject to enlighten us. And the central focus of today's panel discussion will be on two important aspects. Number one, how to undertake and implement the process of delimitation in an unbiased manner on the basis of merit. Secondly, how do we as students, scholars, intellectuals, and professionals can engage in constructive dialogue to resolve the issue and see that the spirit of democracy, that is fairness, equality, and justice, be delivered in the state. Well, as I have just mentioned, for this particular panel discussion, we invited 4 panelists. So may I take the opportunity of having a brief introduction about the panelists. Well, first of all, we have Professor Rosemary, who actually doesn't need an introduction. She is a professor in Department of English in Nagaland University. She was also the head of department, not only of the Department of English Literature, but also the Center for Women's Studies. And she is also the president of the Central Executive Council of Nagaland University Teachers Association, advisor to Naga Mothers Association, and she is not only a well-known personality in the state, but also in different, across the country. Thank you very much, Professor Rosemary, for accepting our invitation to be one of the panelists for today's discussion. Secondly, we have Mr. Jonas Yantan, who is the Vice President of Lota Hoho Hima. Well, Mr. Jonas Yantan is a social thinker, activist, and a writer. He's an author of 2 books, and he has been on this particular issue of delimitation for quite some time. So we look forward to have a very meaningful discussion on this topic with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jonas Yandan, for accepting our invitation to be one of the panelists. Well, we also have Mr. Warsaw Zemek, who is a senior advocate at Delhi High Court. And he has been in the legal profession for nearly 2 decades. And he has been working on this particular issue. So we want to thank you, Mr. Warsaw, for accepting our invitation to be one of the panelists for today's discussion. Lastly, but not the least, we have Mr. Ilu Indang, who is the General Secretary of the Naga Hoho, and he is also a social activist. What I would like to clarify is that we invited him as an individual because we also understand that there are conflicting different opinions even within Naga Hoho and also in different organizations. So we invited Mr. Ilu not as the General Secretary of the Naga Hoho, but as an individual to share his perspectives. Well, the rapporteur for today's panel discussion will be Mr. Shimrisa, who is a PhD scholar in School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. And we have a technical support led by Mr. Pralat, Mr. Kamlesh, and Chetan. Thank you very much for their support. And the cover design for today's panel discussion is designed by Mr. W. Russell Hunsoy. So once again, I would like to thank all the panelists for taking out your time and accepting our invitation to be one of the panelists for today's discussion. And I also would like to thank all the participants who are already online here for taking out the time and be a part of this panel discussion. So to start with, I would like to go to Professor Rosemary to kindly share your perspective on the issue.
Good evening. Really happy here to be with the Naga Scholars Association and of course to interact on a very controversial issue right now. From the announcement of Justice Desai heading the commission, there's been a lot of reactions in our state, Nagaland, for the very fact that we are in the process of peace. A lot of differences have cropped up. You've also seen the tribal ho-hos this morning in the papers where they've already given their statement on why they are insisting on solution before delimitation. Nagaland has always been, I think, a hotspot of controversies for the very fact that we have an unsettled political situation as of now. But I think we need, as scholars, and as researchers, I think it's very important to make our people aware that delimitation is not India's game with us, but delimitation is a normal process which is carried out every 10 years. Earlier, we had gone against the process. But I think now, with the population growth, the kind of skewed inequalities that we see, because I'm going to tell you some data on it, I think it's important to seriously think on why we really need to go through the process. But to go through the process needs also much more sensitization with the public, and I think also with the leaders who are protesting against this very act. We also need to remember that the peace process has very often been used as one of the reasons to object to certain things. If you remember the women reservation issue, that also came up with using Article 371A and the peace process, and that it would spoil the peace process, and So those kind of excuses we have been using over the years. But if you look at the question of delimitation in Nagaland, what actually has been happening? We see that even if it's a state with 60 assembly seats, 60 MLAs, you're already seeing a lot of skewed development in terms of employment, especially from minority tribes and areas where they are not well represented according to the population. The problem with Nagaland is also going to be that because the commission is now looking at the 2001 census, which is flawed, I think it is important for the government of India to look at the 2011 census, which I think would definitely bring a much more rationality in terms of distributing equitably. For example, if you look at the election department data, the Nagaland election data, you will find that one constituency, for example, 27 Mokchung town, which is one constituency, with a population of 11,094, and then you have one constituency in Dimapur, which is Dimapur 2, with a population of 1,32,404. And then, for example, if you look at Semenu, for example, Semenu, which has just one constituency, it's already got a population of 65,623. But if you look at what is happening in the census 2011, the 2011 shows us a population of 19,80,602 in Nagaland. So within that, if you're looking at population constituency, it has to come to 33,010. So if that is worked, I think we are going to see changes where we will see, for example, Wokha district with 5 constituencies instead of 4. We would be looking at Semenu perhaps with two constituencies, looking at the population ratio. You would also be looking at Peren, which actually has just 2 constituencies. We would be looking at 3 constituencies in terms of population. But that is very simple to say, because Naga society, as we all know, is so complex. We already have so many tribes who have actually made their stand very clear that nothing less than waiting for the solution. And the question here is, we already have, yes, everyone is looking forward towards a solution and a political solution to our decades-old Naga political problem. But while waiting for such a solution, are we also going to sacrifice the tribes that actually need this kind of representation through such a delimitation exercise? Suggestion that I'm putting across, and something else I think. And another is that when we talk of a solution and a peaceful political settlement, I think we're also talking about the question of justice. And therefore, if we say Nagas are very democratic, we definitely have to think in terms of justice. So would that kind of a political solution also bring justice for these constituencies and tribes that need to be, considered during such an exercise? Would it be better to have the delimitation and also have the solution at the same time? Because when we don't follow a delimitation after so many years of waiting, I think we are the losers. We've already seen in areas and in districts where the representation is poorly made, you already have so much of lacunae in terms of development, employment opportunities. And I think these are genuine concerns that we really need to look at. Just a few more points, because peace, I think, must also be something where we are talking about a just peace. And if it is about just peace, then the way forward also has to be equi-representation from all the tribes that we are looking at and all the districts. Just a small note on Manipur, because I was looking at Manipur, and you've already given an introduction on Manipur. It's interesting that when we protested against the delimitation, even Manipur did the same thing in 2005. They had a big meeting, all political parties, they refused to go into it. They said the 2001 census was flawed, and that's one of the reasons why the delimitation could not be held, even then. If you look at what we are looking at ahead in the days to come, if the delimitation 2020 exercise is taken, we will also see that we are going to see changes in Manipur. You will see that the 40 seats of the valley is going to be changed into 38 unreserved. You're going to have an increase of 19 ST seats changing into 23 seats, and of course 1 seat for the scheduled castes. So this is what is being looked at, and naturally you again have reactions. Communities from the hill tribes, they've already formed the All Tribal Rights Forum of Manipur. They also already have the Tribal Delimitation Forum. And I think these are the voices that needs to be listened to now, because population has increased, issues of development, employment, education, access to resources. I think these are all different issues which are cropping up now. So in the days ahead, one, sensitization of the community on the importance of justice and development is one. Two, I think for everything, we should not bring in the political side of it to connect in terms of development, because very often when we misinterpret issues that actually are to do with people's development, communities' development, and keep on tying it up always with our political issue, therein, I think we also at the same time become the loser, and I think it's also been quite unrealistic. I will add as we go on.
Thank you very much, Professor Rosemary, for opening the discussion with such a rich perspective on the topic. Well, we will now go to the next speaker, that is Mr. Warsaw Zimik. I would like to request Mr. Zimik to kindly come in and give your perspective.
Thank you, Mr. President. I find it as an honor to be with some of the renowned panelists. And in fact, it is a kind of joy for me to share about the common issues that people from Nagaland and Manipur are facing regarding the delimitation issue. I don't need to talk much about the various problems that Madam has already projected. I would like to focus my small assertion on liquor points. As I'm from Manipur, a short note, Manipur is a state where 90% of the landmass belongs to the tribes. Only 10%, about 10% of the landmass belongs to the valley people, that is Métis, or where, say, general people are residing. Whereas when it comes to population, about 40% of the, or a little bit more than 40% of the population are tribals living in the hill states, hill districts. And the Métis in the Imphal Valley, composed of various communities, they occupied about 60% of the population, or a little bit less than 60%. Whereas when it comes to representation in the state legislative assembly, we have 60 total number of MLAs in the assembly, and they represent 40 out of 60. And whereas hill people represent only 19 plus one unreserved seat. So there was lots of differences, and we feel that we have been deprived of our rights to send proportionate representation. When we are politically deprived, then socially, economically, we are deprived of. So from the very inception of state of Manipur in 1973, this kind of injustice was done to the hill people. When Third Delimitation Commission was formed in 1973, ordinance was this moratorium was imposed in 1976. That is 42nd Amendment of the Constitution of India, which says that until 2001 census, no delimitation exercise will be there in India. So we have been waiting for the last so many years, from 1973 till 2001. But when the Fourth Delimitation Commission was formed in 2002, there was a hue and cry in the valley, and many political parties, mainly valley based, whether it is Congress or BJP or any other political parties, they don't represent the tribal people in the hill areas, whereas they go to the court challenging the census of 2001, and they got a stay of the process of delimitation based on the 2001 census. This was vacated by the Supreme Court, and then the process was, they again took the ordinance route by invoking law and order problem, and it is likely to create threat to national security if this issue is probably not addressed. So central government succumbed to the political rhetorics and narratives of the Métis people, and then along with the Nagaland state and other northeastern states, Arunachal and Assam, this ordinance was invoked on 8th of February 2008, saying that the delimitation process in these 4 states along with Jharkhand shall be deferred on grounds of law and order problem, or which is likely to cause social disharmony and disturbances to law and order. And thereafter, it has been lying idle for another 18 years. So when we deserve to get due shares of representation, proportionate representation in the state assembly, we have been deprived of our rights for the last 18 years. Now, after the reorganization of Jammu and Kashmir Act 2019, this extension of 4th Delimitation Commission was again issued by the presidential notification, and along with the Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, these 4 northeastern states were clubbed together in this new Delimitation Commission. Now, they have again gone to the court challenging that if this Delimitation Commission is to be exercised based on 2001 census, then there is a growth, exponential growth of population in the hill district. So that will amount to violating the very basis of this delimitation, and it will cause injustice to the valley people. So they have gone again to the High Court challenging the 2001 census. Here I would like to remind that from 2001 onwards, the state of Manipur has been getting central budget based on 2001 census. Whether it is officially or say, they said RG, Register General of Census, said that estimated figure of 2001, which is considered as official as of now, which is debatable, of course. But there have been, state government has been getting budget based on 2001 census. When it comes to financial things, they want to get the benefit. But when it comes to proportionate representation, they are questioning the very census of 2001. So that is contradiction. Now, here I would like to say that again, in 2008, there was presidential ordinance, and which was say passed through bill by the parliament somewhere in the September 2008. Now thereafter, before this ordinance, there is an injunction in the form of say moratorium. That was 84th Amendment of the Constitution, which says that there shall be delimitation after 2026 and the first census thereafter. So if we wait for 2031 census, then the amount of injustice inflicted on the hill people will be enormous. That will carry to another 28 years. That will be altogether 28 years. So taking into consideration of the issues that is going on, I would like to say that law, when it is applicable, when it comes to this exercise, it is a matter of law. And when it comes to law, what we have to understand is law is nothing but common sense. So if we apply the total number of population of a state, whether it is in Nagaland or Manipur, divided by the total number of the say, MLS, Member of Legislative Assembly, the average population will be the required constituency number, constituency population for every constituency. Now, if there is, say, more number in a certain constituency, that needs to be redefined in terms of readjustment. And if there are some constituencies which is short of that average, then it also requires to be readjusted. So it is a matter of this commission has a jurisdiction and mandate based on 2001 census. It has no jurisdiction to think about increasing the total number of seats. It is to confine its jurisdiction based on 2001 census and Act of 2000, Delimitation Act 2002. So this delimitation has limited authority to exercise its jurisdiction, and therefore, say if there many people shouting against this exercise. I would like to remind that in a democracy, even if we are entitled to express our opinion in terms of freedom of speech and expression, what we have to understand is that our expression of opinion is just representing your interest, my interest. But my interest or your interest, whether it is sanctioned by law or not, that matters. If your interest or my interest is not supported by law, then it is not a matter of right. What matter of right comes only when your interest and my interest is supported by law or sanctioned of law. So, in fact, delimitation commission, exercise of delimitation commission is beyond the reach of litigation. What they are trying to circumvent the due process of law is they are incorporating this census issue, and they want to make an issue that until unless this delimitation or this census issue is settled before the court of law, the process of delimitation cannot be exercised in Manipur. What I understand for the Nagaland is that Nagaland government, or for that matter, say majority group, are asserting that it is the talk is going on between the Naga underground forces and the government of India, and if delimitation process is carried out, then it undermines the process of negotiation, peace settlement, because that will reflect that everything is going on in the interest of Constitution of India and not incorporating the Naga's interest. So it amounts to creating suspicion of the sincerity of government of India. That's why if government of India is willing to solve this problem sincerely, then this process should be stopped. That is one argument we have heard. On the other hand, as long as this same state assembly exists, and as long as we are sending our representative, then it has to be within the parameter of that law where we are playing the game. So, when state of Nagaland was created as the 16th state of India, we find there was injustice done to some group of, say, communities where they could not send their equal share of proportionate representation in the state assembly. And if this injustice is continued, it doesn't grant any right to the other group to continue discriminating those minorities who have been deprived of their proportionate representation in the state assembly. This kind of injustice, wrongs should be corrected. As far as my knowledge is concerned, or as far as I would like to say, assert as a lawyer, that such wrongs have to be corrected in due course of time. And the delimitation process is the right time to bring justice, equal justice to every citizens of the country. I will follow up in the next discussion hour. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warsaw, for giving a much broader perspective on the issue, not only from from the Manipur context, but also from national perspective. Well, we have many other questions to be asked, so but then we'll come back to you later on. Now we will go to Mr. Ilu Indang. I would like to request him to kindly share your perspective on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Yes.
Hello. We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Naga Scholars Association, for initiating this dialogue, and which is very timely. See, I would like to share my personal views on the much talked about delimitation and solution. Amid fear and tensions created by COVID-19 pandemic, there glaringly stands two realities to harm the Naga society for posterity to remember and hurt forever, if not handled with utmost care and due diligence. Everyone has a say in these two pertinent topics today. Many have raised their voices for and against delimitation. Apprehensions have been raised to the post-delimitation vis-a-vis solution scenario. Delimitation, for one, is an act of Indian Parliament that chooses to provide proportionate that falls within the parameters of the Indian Constitution. It takes into account the number of voters for constituency based on the census of a specific year. It seldom happens in many decades. Solution, Naga political solution, on the other hand, is a strive of the people to achieve sovereignty outside the purview of the Indian Constitution. It does not seek appropriate article or clause of the Indian Constitution to happen. It seeks to amalgamate the Nagas as a people into a sovereign setup. The collision of these two terms and entities is, in its entirety, is an insult to the aspiration of the Nagas. The nonchalant, coercive idea of innately combining the two is a paradox which is non-committal to the persistent ideology of Nagas as a people. The present state Nagaland was created taking into account the need faced by the people. So also was the Delimitation Act in 1971. The delimitation was carried out in 1971 was an opportunistic success for few tribes of the state. This created disparity among the people and tribes that is seen even today. Leaving history to its peril, the present handling of the COVID-19 fiasco and debacle stares deep into our soul. Had it been for a single district, matters would have taken a different turn. But for the voices of unity to strive together as a people, their voices are being given a second glance and hearing. Because as a people, they are represented much more. If the voices of the people are left unheard, it spells doom for the government. On the other hand, for the unlucky few, it was just a mischance and error in names. The perilous nature of the error in times of pandemic was foregone, as the debacle less happened and least bothered for. This is the more than adequately represented today are choosing to go behind the veiled form of solution so as to astutely keep for themselves the privileges that they have thus far enjoyed. As per theory, but today we are faced with many disparities because of this. When it comes to developmental activities and other schemes, it has been already discussed. Some of my co-panelists have already mentioned. Everything happened with 2001 census. There was no objection in any form. Unfortunately, when it comes to delimitation, the question of 2001 census comes in. I think it is time for us to do away with it, and then we have to be more practical in this. It is time for us to also respect our neighbors. All these years, the benefits of 2001 census have been enjoyed. All welfare schemes, developments. There was no question of false census of 2001. There was no question of defective census. And if I am to correctly remember, in 2005, government of Nagaland has written to the Registrar General of India Census Commissioner, and then there they have mentioned that the delimitation exercise should not take place in Nagaland. But there was no response from the Census Commission. And now, interestingly, basing on 2001 census, this first amendment act of Nagaland Municipal Act was amended. That was in 2006, based on 2001 census. When the government is making use of 2001 census, I think there is no question of saying that 2001 census is defective. As I have briefly stated, see, this delimitation can only bring about justice to the people. Now, if we are to roughly look at the representation, the population per constituency, Zonaboto, Mokokchung, and some other constituencies, districts, approximately, if we are to look at, one constituency is represented by about 20,000 voters, population. Whereas, if we are to look at Wakha, Peren, and some few other districts, per constituency, approximately, it's coming to 40,000. There's a huge gap of difference. And this disparity needs to be corrected, as it was rightly pointed out earlier. Now it's time for us to bring about justice to our people. It is also understood that if this delimitation exercise takes place, there could be some unpleasant situations. But I think we need to be more realistic, as I have stated earlier. We need to look at the reality, the disparity, the injustice that some of our own people are suffering because of this. Therefore, if we are to live together as a people and if we are to have mutual respect for one another, I think it's high time that we share whatever is due for our fellow brothers. And this exercise has been opposed by many. At the same time, there are also groups of people, tribes, those who are waiting patiently that the government of India will deliver justice to the people. And we are hopeful that this time this exercise would bring definitely justice to the people. And when it comes to the solution aspect, I think, as I have already stated earlier, we should not be confused, and I think we should not drag the issue of Naga political solution along with this delimitation. As far as I'm concerned, these two are two different issues, and I think we should not drag together this issue, which will create more problems within the Naga family. And see, one clarity is that when we look at Naga political issue and when we look at the way things are happening with the government of India, I think there was also proposals to increase seats in the assembly and also in the parliamentary constituencies. But when there is no solution and when things are not happening immediately, I think we should go along with whatever is available within our reach, and we should make the best use of it. And we should allow our fellow brothers to enjoy the same privileges. See, today, our Naga society, when we look at, particularly in Nagaland, there have been gaps of haves and the have-nots. And the way even the people, and the way it is represented, it is very sad that many deserving could not represent the voice of the people in the assembly. And this is the right moment for us to do justice and allow the deserving to come at par with the rest of the Naga family. And together, I think we should move forward in unison. Thank you, and if need be, maybe I will join later.
Thank you, Mr. Elu Indang. Within this very short span of time, you have shared so many important issues. Anyway, we will come back to you. Thank you so much for giving such a rich perspective on the issue. Now we will go to Mr. Jonas Yantan, who has been on the issue of delimitation for quite some time. We would like to take his perspective on the issue. Please.
Thank you, President Naga Scholars Association,
Hello.
for giving me this opportunity to be
hello.
Hello, can you get me?
No, we cannot hear you. You have to increase the sound, I think. Or maybe you have to come a little closer.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but not so loudly. Can you hold to your cordless mic closer? Yeah, you can start.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Is it clear? Hello?
Hello, yes?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, I'm really grateful to our Naga Scholars Association for inviting me to this very pertinent issue at hand. Amidst personalities like Madam Rose and then also Zimik, Ilu. You know, as a social activist and a humble citizen, the way I look at this delimitation is actually it is not an issue as such. But what I see is I see this as a very severe attitudinal problem, especially in the state of Manipur and Nagaland. If you see Assam, the problem is completely a different issue. But here in Nagaland, it is nothing but an issue of attitude. And that is why now the language used both in Manipur and Nagaland for describing delimitation is transfer of seats from one district to another or from one tribe to another. You know, these are attitudinal problems. And this is used by, unfortunately, by the politicians. And then at the social level, the way people describe delimitation is loss and gain of seats. You know, this is nothing but misunderstanding of delimitation issue itself. Because the purpose of delimitation is not to deprive any district, but the main purpose, the sole purpose of delimitation is only to bring about proportionate representation of the people for equitable opportunity of development. And therefore, to oppose delimitation can only mean or intend to perpetuate the prevailing disparity among the people. So the reasons offered against delimitation by section of society like peace process, political settlement, etc., are not only lame and irrelevant excuses, but in effect, actually it demeans the very Naga political issue. It is nothing short of abuse of a sacred movement. Like earlier, even Madam also pointed out, The Naga issue has been even used against the women's rights. So it is so abusive. In fact, what we are doing is we are belittling the Naga struggle. Now, another misleading reason being reported to the Delimitation Commission by Nagaland government in 2006, and I quote, that Nagaland state is inhabited by various Naga tribes, each having their own distinct traditional territorial boundaries, which nobody is objecting actually, on the basis of which the existing district and assembly constituency boundaries were largely demarcated, thereby making a fresh delimitation exercise involving transfer of assembly seats from one tribal district to another would be a complicated and sensitive exercise. I think these languages nothing but a false representation of the very meaning of what delimitation is supposed to do. Now, we have already faced, as mentioned, two delimitations already in 64 and 72. And they were purely based on census only and not as contended by the state government. And because as per their reasons, if it is so, if it is purely by tribe-wise and territorial integrity, then there should have been no delimitation in 1964 and 72 at all. So here, as opposed to Manipur, where we have the valley people against the hill people, in Nagaland, we may describe it as too many cooks spoil the brood. Now, here in Nagaland, we have only hill tribes. There are no plain tribes. So now the confusion and the problem is only among the hill tribes. So here what we see is, as I mentioned, there is a big attitudinal problem. Those who have gained more seats in 72, not by anything, but by the census of 71, and which they deserved it at that point of time. But today they don't want to lose even a seat now. And the way to look at delimitation is something as if it has come from Mars, as if they have never seen in their life, as if they cannot understand what delimitation is. And then blaming it on an issue like the Naga issue, which in the process, they're only demeaning it. So now, here, delimitation in itself being a parliamentary act and cannot be challenged in a court of law. And it is purely a constitutional obligation which must be implemented by all means. I think there is no way out of escaping this time, as far as I personally understand, because the deferment, the reason of deferment is now no more relevant today, as it was deferred on the ground of disturbance, a law and order problem, which in fact actually was not correct, which was actually through a very clandestine representation of the situation in Nagaland. And so much so when it was in 2008 that delimitation was deferred for Nagaland along with Manipur and Assam and all that. And the reasons given was that there will be a very severe law and order problem. But immediately after a few months of that declaration, after a few months of its declaration, the government of India extended the 20-kilometer belt of Nagaland as disturbed area. And the very government who proposed for extending the for differing the delimitation on the ground of peace problem. Now, the moment the government of India declared 20-kilometer belt as disturbed area, Nagaland government vehemently opposed. So we can just understand the type of attitude by which we look at things. And so here, from a layman's point of view, Nagaland as the 16th state of the Union of India, we have opted to join a parliamentary democratic form of government. And as long as we are in a democratic and parliamentary form of government, an exercise like delimitation is within the constitution itself. And so without the exercise, I think, in short, what I would like to say is anyone, I or anyone who opposes delimitation is nothing but trying to propagate and perpetuate injustice and inequality in the society. Thank you very much.
Yantan sir, your voice, yeah.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Jonas Yantan, for sharing your perspective on the issue. Well, I think now we will go to some clarification. So to start with, I would like to ask to Professor Rosemary. The question is, I would like you to give your perspective on this issue. Like, why do the Nagas always hide behind the Naga issue when it suits us? And at the same time, the Nagas remain silent when we are supposed to speak out, especially regarding, governor's letter. There was total silence from the Naga tribes. I would like to request you to please share your perspective on this.
Jamo, unfortunately, I think that is the Naga reality as of now. We have seen Article 371 being selectively misinterpreted on many occasions to suit our own purposes. That is one. We have been using the peace process, predicting bloodshed, predicting turmoil, every time we didn't want something to happen. So I had already talked about the women reservation where they predicted a lot of terrible things to come if it was implemented. And I think we are also again looking at a situation which is going to be very unfortunate, where today you already have 11 of these tribes who have come out very clearly that delimitation will not be possible before solution. But the reality is that we are being confronted as of today with so many issues of violation of ceasefire ground rules by the armed forces, by the government. We are already wondering where exactly is our peace process going. And in such a situation, it is difficult to understand whether we are really going to wait for this solution. As far as the future and the peace settlement is concerned, even our leaders should understand that the peace settlement we are looking ahead in the days to come is also going to be an increase of seats. So how is it going to be increased? Wouldn't the delimitation process make it more easier, equitable, give more justice to the tribes that are not well represented in such a scenario? Because the future which we envision should actually be a future of justice. It cannot be a continuation of injustice for some of the tribes that actually are waiting for the delimitation process. That is one. And secondly, I'm also very critical of the state government in all these kinds of confusion. We had just, Mr. Jonas, I think, had talked about the language of the government. We've also had our policymakers who always want to hide behind certain organizations. The duty of the government which is elected is actually to implement policies which are good for the people. which is supposed to bring justice, equitable distribution. And I think we need to look at that. What really is emphasized in such a situation? It shows that we are not actually looking at the idea of that ideal democratic society we claim to be. We are not. And if we are to look at the future, and especially for the younger generation, are we again going to wait till 2026 or even further, 2030, for a proper delimitation to take place? What is this, what is this whole dynamics that is coming out from policymakers, from tribal leaders? And for your information, I don't belong to these tribes that are actually asking for delimitation as such. But I think we need to understand, we need to really understand, look at the data, look at the population data, look at the census data. It is there in black and white. For the government and for policymakers, it is high time such policies are initiated.
Thank you very much, Professor Rosemary, for giving a very satisfying answer to the question. Well, I would like to go to Mr. Ilu. Hello, Mr. Ilu. Well, the question for you is, how would you respond to the joint tribe Hoho demand for a solution before delimitation? Of course, you have talked a little bit about that. I would like you to elaborate a little bit on that issue.
Yeah, the issue of solution and delimitation, as I've already stated, see, it can amount to lots of debates and for and against. But as far as my understanding on this solution and delimitation is concerned, in the past December 2019, when the 14 tribes wrote to the Prime Minister of India to expedite the peace process for an honorable solution, they have also mentioned that they cannot accept this proposed Pan-Naga-Hoho structure. Now, when Pan-Naga-Hoho structure is not acceptable, which means the question of increase in the seats doesn't arise, as far as my understanding goes. I may be wrong because since I'm not a part of the negotiating table, but as far as my understanding goes is this. Now, how can we club together with solution and delimitation? There is no relation as such. Now, as I have stated, whatever is available, whatever is at our reach at the moment, I think we should take full advantage of this and then deliver justice to all the deserving people of the state. And when times come for solution, accordingly, that delimitation or increase of seats will take place according to its own time. I think it is not appropriate for us to start talking about post-solution with 90, 100 seats. I think that is not practicable at the moment. So let us focus on this. My appeal and my request to the 14 tribes to be more realistic in this.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ilu, for the perspective that you have just shared. Now we will go to Mr. Warsaw Zemek. Well, Mr. Warsaw Zemek, well, you must have seen today's in a newspaper, you know, the 14 tribes, the 11 tribes, they have, the Hohos of the 11 tribes have given a joint statement regarding solution, you know, before delimitation. Well, in that case, it is not only going to affect the state of Nagaland, but it is also going to affect the state of Manipur, also Arunachal Pradesh, also Assam. I would like you to share your perspective on this. What is your opinion on this?
Thank you once again. If the people of Nagaland really believes in this present Nagaland state under Article 371A. They should understand that this is an asymmetrical arrangement. Therefore, they are looking for better political solution. If they think that they are looking for better solution on the curb of this ongoing political talks, then on moral ground, our MLAs and MPs should resign, that the asymmetrical arrangement under Article 371A is not workable for the Nagas. So, until and unless this political negotiation is come to an end, logical conclusion, we will not follow the provision under Article 371A. In that case, to my observation, memorandum or press statement issued by 11th conglomerate tribes can be justified. Otherwise, when it comes to benefits, they want to hold on the Article 371. But when it comes to asking for equal representation of every community, they are resorting to political negotiation. On the curb of that, on the pretext of political negotiation, this delimitation exercise cannot be carried out, is unjustifiable. Why I would like to say in this case is that there is a danger. Government of India, for that matter, India believes in politics of existential politics. This is very dangerous. Live for today, tomorrow will take care of its own. So the one who is more strong in terms of lobbying, political rhetorics, narrative, then they used to apply appeasement policy, central government. So, sacrificing the interests of minority group, they used to appease the stronger one. And that is how discrimination is perpetuated for many minority groups in India. And this is not an exception to some of our, say, people, whether it is in Nagaland or in Manipur. There is no, say, exception that government of India used to play politics of existentialism. And that is exactly what is going on in Nagaland and what is going on in Manipur. In the year 2008, when presidential ordinance was invoked, they cited law and order problem. And in fact, that was the best time in Nagaland. There was no law and order problem in the year 2008 or thereafter. Even before that, after ceasefire has been announced in 1997, there was considerably peaceful coexistence in Nagaland, so also in Manipur. But the majority group or the elites in the society, when they invoke politics of lobbying, rhetorics, narrative, then it convinced the central leadership and they appease the stronger one. That's why, to my understanding, presidential ordinance shelving or deferring the delimitation process was done. Now, the latest notification of 8th of February 2020 said that there is no longer law and order problem in these states where the Delimitation Commission has been appointed to go ahead with this delimitation process. So the various projection done by the various groups, be it in Nagaland or Manipur, saying that it will create more problem if this process is continued. It is not justifiable. And why I'm saying is that, as I have mentioned in my first submission, that yes, freedom of speech and expression is a fundamental right for every citizen under the Constitution of India. On that pretext, everybody has the right to express his or her point of view. He or she is entitled, for that matter, 11th group of the tribals are entitled to their opinion. They have the right to say. But the issue is whether their interest is backed by sanction of law or not. If it is not, then it's okay, let them say, but law is not giving them any due protection. So for the one, if we are asserting for exercise of this delimitation as a matter of right, then there is a sanction of law. The Constitution says clearly, and the Delimitation Commission has been appointed. What for? This has been appointed this time. In 2002 also it was appointed, but it was deferred for one or two reasons, whatever reason. But again, knowing fully well that situation has been improved considerably, Government of India has issued, reappointed this commission. Now, if it is deferred, then I think we should understand that Government of India should not behave as time and again like this. If that is the case, we should also educate our people. We have to make our people understand that doing the right thing has the sanction of law. If we come out for rally, dharna, whatever, we are not going against the Constitution of India. The limitation process is within the sanction of law, and if we demand, then suddenly we are playing the game according to the rule book. But others on the curb of exercising the freedom of speech without the sanction of supporting their rights, then suddenly it will be inflated. That's what I feel. If friends in Nagaland thinks that the limitation process cannot be carried out just because talks is going on, I think that's a misplaced perception. As long as Constitution of India applies, then it should be carried out without further delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Warsaw, for sharing your perspective on that. We now have a question for Mr. Jonas Yanthan. The question is, census has been, an issue, ever since to the laptop. I think it may be more audible.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello. Okay, let me try then. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
It's clear.
Hello.
Hello. We can hear you.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you, but not very. Yes.
So now, like the only difference between Nagaland and Manipur in this issue is uh, in Manipur, the Valley people, with an intention not to part with any of their existing seats to the hill areas of the state, came up with a clandestine idea of attacking the base of delimitation, the census. Now, they filed a PIL against the 2001 census in the Guwahati High Court in 2003. And you know, they got a decision in their favor. So now, not satisfied with the High Court's decision, our Hill People organization took the case to the Supreme Court. On hearing the matter, the Supreme Court stayed the Guwahati High Court's judgment saying that no census can be redone or recensus as per Census Act 1948. So the Manipur case was stayed by the Supreme Court. Now, what we see here is there are at least three main grounds on which a census cannot be redone or recensused. Number one, for instance, before final publication of an electoral roll, a time frame is given to the public for claims and objections, if any. The same is done in census as well, before a gazette notification of the census. This is number one. Number two, census enumeration is not merely on the number of persons that are alive, but involves economic, social, habitats, infants, adolescents, old, at that point in time, including the homeless. That is why we have midnight enumeration of homeless people. So this is what a census is. And then thirdly, the hundreds of state officials, right from director of census, then the DCs down to the village functionaries, and thousands of grassroots enumerators are employed, involving huge expenditure of money as well to carry out the census task. Now, therefore, if a census is proved as bogus in a court of law, then all the mentioned personnel will have to be taken to task, including the then ruling government under whose patronage the census work had been carried out. So it may be recalled here that the government of India had awarded gold and silver medals from the census director down to the enumerators. So if the census is wrong, all these persons have to be punished as per law for a bogus work. Census being a central subject, the question arises whether the union government will be willing to persecute the then state government and the erring officials and its employees. Now, there are a lot of things which are coming in here. So that is why a census cannot be redone again. And that is why before publication, enough time is given to the public for claims and objections, if any. So if those who are objecting now, if they were to have objected at that point of time, then there would have been something. In fact, in Wokhar district, we had some objections in certain pockets of the district, which were then taken to the DC who was the in charge. And then through the DC, it was sent to the census and clarifications were made. So like that, objections, if any, should have been done on time. But now, since the Manipur Valley people's case, as well as our Nagaland CPO's case against the census now appears to be purely an afterthought, as it was not done during the period set aside for claims and objections. It may be also noted here, at least in Nagaland, of course, our member, Mr. Vosos, was saying that they were aware of 2001, that there will be a delimitation. But as for the Nagas here, as for me also, even me, I wasn't aware that there would be a delimitation in 2001. Nobody was aware, at least in Nagaland. So the question of inducing a bogus population does not arise, especially for the state of Nagaland.
Thank you very much.
With regard to census, I
Okay.
think.
Are you finished, or you still want to add some more points?
Hello.
Uh,
Yeah. So what I mean to say in short is, since a census cannot be recensused as per Census Act 1948, is on a very relevant and impractical suggestion to do any recensus. And that is why it has made it clear and included even in the Act of 1948 that no census can be recensused. And so whatever happens after the claims and objection is nothing but, especially at a time when, the clearest thing is, if there were to be no delimitation, I tell you, no Nagas will be ever aware of even what is happening. We Nagas are so insincere, dishonest. Dishonesty has given rise to all these issues. Otherwise, delimitation is not an issue. It is an act of parliament which must be implemented, because it is specially designed for any democratic government. Thank you for now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Jonas Yantan, for giving a critical views on, on the census in Nagaland. Well, now I have a question for Warsaw Zimik. Well, the question to you, Mr. Warsaw Zimik, from the views that we have gathered from all the panelists, there is a kind of a unanimity on the issue that the delimitation should go ahead. However, we know that those who are enjoying the privileges right now may go to an extent to, stop the exercise. So I would like to request you to share your views, your views on that, how to resolve those challenges.
This issue is very intriguing. As I have said, earlier also, since government of India is always playing existential politics, most of the time they don't follow rules and principles, values and ethics in politics. In many issues, government of India doesn't bother about all these principles that have been established or enshrined in the Constitution. That is very dangerous. So we have to be very careful about how developed or advanced group in the society are exploiting the minorities or undeveloped or less developed group, because they used to adopt this politics of existential politics. Definitely they will adopt this time again, because in Manipur, Meiteis have started writing in the newspaper, that is propaganda.
Okay.
They are also doing awareness campaign in the valley that if delimitation exercise is carried out, how many of you are willing to come out on the road, burn whatever is available, and then draw the attention of the central leadership? this is a stage-managed politics they are going to present again in order to defer the delimitation process in Manipur. I think in Nagaland, situation may be a little bit different, but then they will resort to sending the representation to central leadership from Prime Minister down to SC Commissioner, including this Delimitation Commission, saying that in the interest of peace and harmony, this should not be carried out in Nagaland. If it is done, if it is carried out, then there'll be bloodshed. There'll be law and order problem. It will bring social disharmony. So when there is peaceful coexistence in the society, why should we disturb? Why should we disturb this peaceful coexistence? That is the argument they are likely to put up. And you see, to counter this thing, you should also adopt a strong propaganda. If necessary, you should also send your representative in a form of lobby. Of course, lobbying is illegal in India, but then any political issues that comes to any society, they go for lobbying. It is off the record kind of, say, practice in India also. And you should not continue, you should increase your propaganda, whether it is the news media, through national or TV or print media. You should also sensitize within the minority communities where you have been deprived of your right for so long. Same thing in Manipur also. This is a kind of projection that tribal people living in hill districts of Manipur are taking serious, steps in the form of sending representation to the Prime Minister of India, to the opposition leader, to the various ministers, SC Commission, and if necessary, will also put up a strong argument before the Delimitation Commission when opportunity is given to us at the time of public hearing. When once they took decision, normally they give public hearing in the state. So you should come up with proper preparation. Documentation should be properly prepared, docket, your diagram, this chart. It should be properly prepared in advance, so that when you get the opportunity during the public grievances hearing by the Delimitation Commission, you should submit. You should not miss that opportunity. That is the only opportunity to press upon the Delimitation Commission when public hearing is done in Nagaland. One day hearing will be there in Nagaland. That should not be forgotten. Same thing, it will be done in Manipur. So we are also preparing to submit concept note, proper concept note with diagrams and charts paper in order to make sure that this time the Delimitation Commission is exercised, not deferred. It is carried out. That is what we are looking for. And friends from Nagaland, as a Christian state, in fact, since it is political issue, but then our Christian ethos should not be forgotten altogether. What we have to see is that when we cannot speak the truth, what kind of ethos we are living for our posterity. I may be somebody today, but if I cannot speak the truth, then I think I'm giving wrong lesson to my children. And this kind of culture should not be practiced for the interest of our future Naga society. Thank you. Randy. Can't hear you. Your mic is off.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. The question is to Professor Rosemary. The question is, what is your, your message towards those who are opposing the delimitation? Would you like to share your perspective on that? Hello.
Well, Mr. President, you must remember the ones who are also opposing are from my tribe. And I would still say what I had said this evening. I think the kind of Naga future, whether it be before solution or even after solution, for the younger generation, has to be a future of peace and justice. When we talk of peace, it cannot be without justice. And therefore, hopefully, in the coming days ahead, there will be better understanding between the tribes. I think it is also important for the other tribes to understand the disadvantages which has been faced by these tribes that are now all for delimitation. And one last point that I'd like to make is we need to remember, we have our friend Zimik here, but we need to remember that the Nagas in the Manipur hills, the tribals there, are also waiting for a solution just like us. So when they are totally out demonstrating, writing for delimitation to come and get justice, it is, I think, very, very sad that our tribes here in Nagaland are actually not allowing even the other few tribes that are talking about their rights and the needs for equitable distribution and representation to speak about their rights. I hope in the days to come, we will see more clarity, more understanding, and peaceful atmosphere. There must be peace.
Thank you, Professor Rosemary. Yeah, for such a profound, way forward that you have just expressed. Well, now we will give the time to the audience. I would like to request if there is any question, you may kindly raise your voice and you can unmute your microphone. And you can, while asking the question, I would like to request you all to be very specific, and also you have to mention the name of the panelist to whom you would like to put forward the question. So now the time is given to the participants for expressing your views and also for asking questions.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Ash. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go forward. I mean, yeah.
There are like similarities as well as differences on the question of delimitation in Nagaland and Manipur. However, we already know that there are groups that oppose delimitation, and there are groups that actually desperately wants delimitation to be conducted. Now, in the past, I mean, the situation is going to likely to create law and order problem, or what is known as a social disharmony, disturbance. However, what should be the way forward now? We know that groups are already opposing, and it's if the situation escalates, then it might become explosive. So what should be the way forward? And civil societies are not willing to talk to each other in the first place. They are, issuing different press statements, opposing press statements against each other. So somehow, if delimitation exercise has to be implemented, then somehow some solution has to be brought, I think, between the communities. Otherwise, I think it might end up in a legal tussle, or the central government might say that there's a law and order problem. So the delimitation process may be like rescinded again. Another question is I'm wondering whether there is a serious problem with the current delimitation exercise. mainly because last time delimitation was stopped, halted, mainly because of law and order problem. Now, currently, the exercise is based on moving seats. I mean, what you call exchanging seats between the districts. So it is likely that some communities are going to suffer, some districts are going to suffer, and some districts will gain some seats. Now, this question of losing seats, losing your parliamentary seats, is a serious issue for most of the communities. Say this, of course, technically it is district, but when it comes to actual power issue as well as interrelationships within the state political structures, whether it is Nagaland or Manipur, then it is in terms of communities. So whether I'm wondering whether if the current delimitation commission had been given the authority to increase the seats, if they're going to be the increase in every district, if every community is going to get additional seats, I don't think there'll be any opposition. But the opposition, I think, is happening mainly because some communities are likely to lose seats. So why the current delimitation commission has not been given the provision to increase seats? I want to ask this question to my lawyer friend, Mr. Woso Zimik. And why is the reason? Why has the center not given this power to the current delimitation commission? Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much, Dr. Shimri Wong, for for giving your views and also asking questions to Warsaw Zibing. I would like to request Mr. Warsaw to come in and answer his question.
Well, I have already mentioned that this delimitation commission has a certain jurisdiction. The mandate given to this commission is based on 2001 census. Based on 2001 census under Delimitation Act 2002. Now in 2002, there is 84th Amendment of the Constitution of India, which put moratorium on increase of seats either in the House of the People, that is Parliament, and the Legislative Assembly of every state. So until 2026 comes, and the first census thereafter, that is 2031, the existing number of parliamentary seats as well as state assembly seats will remain as it is. So this commission has no authority to increase the total tally of the existing seats of state assembly or parliament. It has to confine its jurisdiction of readjustment and redrawing the constituency territories as per 2001 census. Here, I would like to put a caution that if delimitation is deferred this time and wait for the 5th Delimitation Commission in 2031, say in the context of Manipur, Imphal is going to be, the capital of Manipur, Imphal is going to be business hub of India. The act is or look is policy of government of India has made it possible that Imphal is going to be international business hub. Tulihar Airport has been already declared as international airport. Dupu Railway project is going to be reached Imphal very soon, maybe at the end of this year. Trans-international highway from Mandalay to Imphal bus transportation is already there. And railway project is already in the process. So by 2031, Imphal will be crowded by double the population of what we have today. And this population will come not from the hills, but from the mainland India. So census talks about taking the population of migration from one place to another at one particular point of time, so that the existing population which has been recorded may not be the same today or in 2031. So there is an apprehension that what kind of benefit that is accruing to us today may not be even available by 2031. So our apprehension is that it should not be deferred, it should be conducted, and what we deserve should be given to the Hill district. And the same thing in Nagaland also, Dimapur is going to expand its importance not only in terms of economy but population. So they, by 2031, we could comfortably apprehend that there will be more seats in Dimapur, and those seats may be deducted from other districts, or altogether seats may be increased in Nagaland. But we cannot say this much seat will be expanded or increased in Nagaland or in Manipur. But if we go by the yardstick of all India level, the constituency population that we have today is very less. Comparing UP or mainland India, our population is still very less. So, Government of India may say that since your population is very less, we should not incur more expenses by expanding the number of seats in the state legislative assembly. So it may be curtailed that way. In that case, where populations are concentrated or going to be concentrated are going to get more seats in the near future. And these seats will be deducted in other areas where people have been migrated to towns and cities. So that kind of equation will be there. And this is the apprehension that what each of the district deserve today should be given today. Let tomorrow decide its own fate, but what is available on what we deserve today should not be denied or deprived of that opportunity. This is our understanding, or this is the understanding that knowledgeable people are talking about in this time. I hope Shim's question is more or less addressed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warso. Again, back to the participants. If you have any questions, please take this opportunity and ask the panelists.
Well, okay. Okay, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah,
Can you hear me, sir?
we can hear you, but there's
Okay.
so,
Well,
yeah, volume.
yes.
You can go ahead, please.
Okay. So, my name is Naga. My concern is about the implementation of delimitation before solution to the Indo-Naga issue. I always believe I'm a Naga first and my tribe second. And well, I belong to eastern part of Nagaland and eastern Nagas faces lots of injustice with Naga in the Naga state of Nagaland. I believe it's more important to give the common Naga people's interests in priority. The Naga's common people interest is the solution to the Indo-Naga political issue before anything else. So I see the delimitation process as an insult to the Naga people's aspiration, while tribal bodies are also totally against it. And well, this delimitation may be an act of the Indian act of the parliament
time for all Nagas, I think we are all looking ahead to a solution. But while looking towards this solution, we must remember that delimitation, we're also talking about justice. The issue here, which we also need to remember, is that there are many opinions have come up over the last few months, and allegations that the Indian government is bringing in delimitation at this point in time when we are seeking a solution. We need to remember that delimitation is actually being made for a number of states that have missed out earlier, which is Assam, Manipur, Arunachal, including J&K and Nagaland ourselves. Secondly, for someone like me, who is also been supporting through the organization the long drawn peace process, I think we also need to remember that the future we are looking at has to be a future of justice. We don't know who will take the final decision. I personally feel it should be the state government. We have the state government and policymakers who will decide what to do. Let these tribes sit down together and decide what should be done. Finally, it'll be the people who will decide along with the state government. There's no question of, choosing being a Naga and of choosing following a constitutional right. But in the process, as long as we are under the Constitution of India and as long as we are in this country, before we have our own Naga country, we also must remember there are rights, constitutional rights, which actually are guaranteed to everyone. And at this point in time, I think we are talking of these tribes that need the process to get that equitable distribution. And I hope young people, especially young people, will really understand and really not go on again with the flow of, getting mixed up between the two.
Thank you very much. If Mr. Ilu
Yeah, Mr. Dr. Zuzamo?
Yes, please.
Yeah, can I
Please,
just,
please.
yeah, thank you. Thank you, NSA, for organizing this. It's such a pertinent, important discussion. And thank you to all the panelists. And so my question is not exactly a question. I wonder if observation is allowed, but so it's more of an observation. However, I was just wondering, because I'm also in a way involved with the delimitation process that is there going on in Manipur.
Mr. Abam, you can share your views, but I would like to request you to kindly be very precise. Thank you.
So since I'm also involved with that, with this delimitation process, I was wondering, like, how far are the group that is supporting delimitation in Nagaland? How far are they ready, and how much have they organized? Because realizing one's right is a different thing, but being ready for one's right is a different matter. So I was wondering, like, if there is any documentation and how far, because I think at the end of the day, I think the parties that are against are much more better, in a better place than the party asking for delimitation. So how far are they ready? Any panelists can perhaps answer this.
Okay, I hope Warsu may come in, or can we ask Mr. Jonas to share your views on that?
Actually, first of all, what I feel is, what I observe is, the Nagas, whether in Nagaland or in Manipur, I think we need to really educate ourselves. We need better information through various seminars and all that. The first thing is, we are living in a democratic country. And so we must also understand the democratic processes. Earlier I was saying, the language that people speak. Oh, this district is going to lose to that district. this tribe's seat is going to be transferred. You know, seats are not official officers to be transferred. You know, this is a result of a process only. When a process is implemented, it is not seen in the form of tribes and regions. It only comes about as based on a population. And you know, this delimitation actually is not a thing to be questioned. Whether majority opposes or majority wants is not the issue. The issue is, since we are living in a democratic country, there is no other choice but to welcome the process and do it in the best way that we can. This is because the main purpose of delimitation is only one. It sees only one thing, that is to bring about proportionate representation of the people, to bring about equitable opportunity of progress, development funds, and all that. As Madam was also pointing out, like a constituency who is having only just 7,000 or 6,000 electorates is electing one MLA minister. And we have in some other districts, constituencies, where they have more than 60,000 population. And in Nagaland, we have the LADF fund. Now the LADF fund is 1 crore rupee. So to the 7,000 voters is given 1 crore. 60,000 and above electorate is also given 1 crore. You know, these are gross injustices where developmental disparities come in. And that is why, as a democratic design, by design, now delimitation is part and parcel of any democratic system. So like that young man was saying that delimitation is also one which is going to deprive the Eastern Nagaland of certain seats. You know, it has nothing to do with that kind of idea. But here it is just.
Thank you. It's already been asked by Dr. Jambo, but then I'd like to be more focused here. The facts and figures clearly show that the present constituency delimitation in Manipur and Nagaland is very unfair. So we know that very well. And then the facts and figures speak it out. We don't need to do a research on that. It's very clear. But then I am pretty sure, and many of you will agree with me, that the powerful, privileged sections in Manipur, and also the so-called powerful, privileged tribes, I'm sorry for using this, but then to make things very clear, the powerful and privileged tribes in Nagaland will obviously misuse power and use the best of means and ways to maintain the status quo. So now here, we need to go forward. We, in the sense, the so-called deprived sections and the deprived tribes, we need to go forward. And for that, we also need to get the ignorant masses so that they are equipped with the best of ideas for demanding justice in delimitation. So then, I'd like to request our advocate Warsaw, and also the other panelists may also contribute here. What are the constitutionally accepted ways? What are the constitutionally accepted ways for the deprived tribals in Manipur and the deprived tribes in Nagaland to press the government for delimitation? Because we need to educate the masses, the deprived people, and then activate them in such a way that they together, or rather we together, come forward and do something which is constitutionally acceptable, instead of just talking inside these closed doors. They should come forward. So what are the constitutionally accepted ways for these deprived tribals and deprived tribes in Nagaland to press the government for delimitation?
Yeah, Mr. Warsaw, please take the question.
Walu is a known person to me, and for many of us, is a kind of person who used to come up with innovative questions, and I really appreciate his questions. Well, the purpose and intent of the Delimitation Commission is to bring equitable justice to all sections of the population or society, people at large. There is no special other provisions than the Constitution of India to address this issue. Article 14 of the Constitution talks about equality. It is not only applicable to individual, but to every society. What you deserve legally, I also deserve legally. Now, whatever may be, that has happened in the past. We call it status quo. That status quo, if it is challenged legally, then we should be in a position to understand whether there is a basis of challenging this status quo or not. But to make sure that we achieve our demand under the due process of law, we should also understand that in this world, there is no justice. If you believe in justice, we have to fight for it in order to achieve it. If you don't fight for your right, you will never get justice. So that is the only panacea or remedy for the deprived section of the people, that we should rise up and fight for our rights. That way we can achieve equitable justice. When I say equitable justice, it doesn't mean depriving the due share of the privileged group in the society. There is no question of depriving the privileged section in the society. What we are asking for is equitable justice, not only proportionate representation, but equitable justice. When my voice is not heard, that amounts to violating my right. That is fundamental right. Sending our representative in the House of the People or State Assembly means allowing you to hear your voice, so that if there is lack of development in your area, you are going to represent the people of your area. That means this delimitation exercise is very important for every section of the people in the society. And therefore, we should not shy away to talk about justice. The purpose and intent is not at all to deprive the privileged group. It is focused on equitable justice, equitable and proportionate representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Urso, for answering the question. I think we are already running short of time. So what we are going to do is we will take one round to all the speakers, all the panelists. Would like to request them to take just one minute each to share their views on the way forward for today's discussion. We would like to start with Professor Rosemary.
Thank you, Suchamo. It's been a very interesting evening. I have also learned a lot from my fellow panelists. I think the way forward for us Nagas should be a way of peace, but at the same time, we must also not forget that it has to be also attached with justice. So within that line, hopefully the days ahead will be seeing this form of justice for the tribes that want equitable justice to come to them, and also better understanding from the other tribes. We should also not get confused with the idea of nationalism, because wanting justice and equitable justice does not mean you're less patriotic, and that you're less nationalistic.
Thank you very much for giving such a profound way forward to today's discussion. Now I would like to go to Mr. Ilu Indang. I would like to request him to please take your time.
Thank you once again. As I have stated earlier, I must wish once again for
Hello, we are not you. Hello, Mr. Ilu, are you online, or you have some network connectivity?
hello.
Okay,
Hello.
we'll do like hello.
My network over there. Hello.
Okay, we'll do like this. We are not able to hear you. We will get back to you after after two panelists share their views on today's way forward. So we'll get back to you. Okay, we will go to Mr. Jonas Yantan to share your views on today's way forward.
Well, I am very grateful to our Naga Scholars Association for calling us to such kind of panel discussions. We need more of such. Our Naga society needs a lot of awareness campaign on even on various issues. Like here, the way I see it is delimitation should not have been an issue. That only shows that how ignorant we are. And if not ignorant, but knowingly doing it means we Nagas can be the most unjust people on earth. So this is the only thing. And then it's so unfortunate. I would request our Naga people to stop misusing Naga issue. Naga issue is not a kitchen utensil to be used wherever we like. It must not be misused. Talk on issues as they are, not by diluting things. Because the government of India is not asking us to choose either delimitation or solution. That is not the choice we are given. So here we are, since Nagaland is a democratic state, and that is why we happen to be in that process. The rest of the country has completed, and we are just a few states who have not completed the process. So my humble appeal to all our Naga brothers is to really look at the issue not from any other, but as democratic citizens of the country.
Thank you very much for sharing your views on today's way forward. I would like to go to Mr. Warsaw. Mr. Warsaw, could you take a minute to share your views on today's way forward?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to say that I have taken this service cup of pleasure for many times. I hope you bear with me. Well, my passing remark will be issue has come at the prime of our time. I take it as a challenge. Now, what I would like to say is that whether the world was more beautiful when you come, or it is going to be more beautiful after you left, that thing should be taken note of. And if we believe in passing on good legacy, respectable, honorable society, then we should live to speak up for the truth, and believe in bringing justice in all sections of the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warso. Okay, we will go 1 second to Mr. Ilu Indang. I would like to request him to kindly come in and share your concluding remark on the way forward for today's discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much once again, NSA, for initiating this program. My network was a little bit of a problem, but now I think it should be okay. Firstly, I would like to once again appeal and call upon all the Naga people to adopt a very realistic approach. Let us be more practical. Let us also understand that since statehood, we have not been able to have equitable distribution of states, representation in the government, be it. Now, if we are to look at the Naga society, particularly in Nagaland, I think many communities are still lacking behind, much more than some certain section of the community. Therefore, I think we need to come up, we need to encourage to have justice, equitable distribution among the Naga people. Another thing is that I would also like to call upon the Naga people. We have talked so much about the Naga political issue, the peace talks, the peace process, solution. I do not know whether it is applicable to certain discussions or not, but I think in very often we have mentioned about Naga political talks, solution. I think if we collectively and sincerely contribute in whatever capacity that we can towards resolving our Naga political issue, a day is not far from us where we will have everything in place according to our convenience, according to our desires, according to what we believe. Therefore, collectively, let us ensure that our Naga political movement comes to a logical conclusion. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ilu Indang, for such a thought-provoking way forward on today's discussion. Well, we have come to the end of our today's panel discussion, but just before that, maybe I will summarize a little bit on some of the findings and way forward on today's discussion. Well, facts and figures indicates that there has been disparity in the distribution of seats, not only in Nagaland, but also in Manipur. And, you know, it is also well agreed that delimitation is, you know, necessary, not only necessary, but also, you know, it's very important for rectifying past mistakes to bring social justice and equality in society. And thirdly, Naga, you know, solution and delimitation are of two different things. Hence, it should not be, you know, mixed up or misused. Fourthly, you know, everybody should take delimitation, you know, as an exercise to provide a good representation in society. And lastly, but not the least, there is an urgent need, you know, of justice, peace, and understanding among the Naga society to uplift one another and not to look at one another as rivals. So with this, we would like to come to the end of today's panel discussion. But well, before we conclude our today's panel discussion, I take this opportunity to thank all the esteemed panelists for taking your time and for coming and sharing your rich perspective on the topic delimitation in Nagaland and Manipur, and for making the program a success. Thank you once again to all the esteemed panelists. And secondly, NSA would like to thank Mr. Bralat and his team for extending his support and giving us a technical support. Thank you very much, Mr. Bralat, and your
Thank you, sir.
and a big thanks to Mr. Shim, who is a rapporteur for today's panel discussion. The report will be published tomorrow in different newspapers. So, for those of you who have missed today's panel discussion, can have a glance or go through the report of NSA, panel discussion report tomorrow. Well, NSA also would like to give thanks to Mr. W. Russell Hunzoy for helping us in designing the flyer of the webinar, NSA webinar panel discussion on delimitation in Nagaland and Manipur. And lastly, but not the least, I, on behalf of the Naga Scholars Association, take this wonderful opportunity to thank all the participants for joining us and making today's event a success. Thank you once again, and we look forward to having a much more meaningful discourse even in the days to come. With this, we come to the end of our today's panel discussion. Thank you once again.